The next presentation, the world of hybrid collaboration post-pandemic, with the folks from the IMCCA to introduce his co-host and to tell you all about the IMCCA and what that alphabet soup stands for, is David Danto, IMCCA's Director of Emerging Technology. It's all you.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Ooh, the microphone is working. And I got to operate the clicker and talk at the same time. It's like chewing gum and walking. Thank you all very much for being here. Thank everybody this good afternoon for the brave people that came here, considering all the headwinds that this faced, you know, a hurricane, pandemic, and everything else. My friend Aurangzeb and I will go through a few slides here just to give you a sense of what we've experienced in the industry, show you some stats that you might not be aware of, give you some advice, and then we're going to chat about it. There aren't a lot of us here today, so I'd love it if you guys would just join in the conversation and ask us any questions that you have. You know, we've got 45 minutes to do this. If we do it in 45 minutes, that's great. If we're done with the content in 20 minutes, that's fine too. We really want you guys to get the most out of your time here. So let me move forward. First of all, the alphabet soup that my friend was talking about. The IMCCA is short for the Interactive Multimedia and Collaborative Communications Alliance, IMCCA. I forget how old we are. Is it 22, 23, 24 years? Carol, where are you? I don't see her in the I forget. It's been around for over 2 decades, representing the collaborative communication, high-tech, high-quality communication, whether that was video conferencing or streaming or anything else. We've been providing educational programs in person and online for both of those decades, and we're continuing to do it. Just visit our website, imcca.org, or run over to the IMCCA booth, 5358, right over there. You can see it under the black banner. Get yourself a free pad. Join the organization for free. We do a lot of really good things, and I'm sure you get something out of it. So let's talk about hybrid collaboration and working from home. How many of you guys are working from home now, guys and gals? Okay, so that's an experience that you've had before. Before the pandemic, I don't know how far back you think, these are the news stories that have been in the news for 10 or 20 years. Everybody remember Marissa Mayer at Yahoo telling all the Yahoo employees, you need to come back to the office. We can't have any more lazy people working from home. We had Patrick Pichette at Google saying essentially the same thing. We need everybody in the office. IBM called all of their remote workers back. Remote working has been the scapegoat for bad teams and bad accomplishments in the enterprise for decades. It would be the easiest, obvious scapegoat, you know, and you get all these articles from all these business publications talking about why remote working is bad, why hybrid working is bad, why it's not good for your career. There were 3% of people working remotely and working from home, 3 to 5% prior to the pandemic. That's all that had existed prior to that. Then if you take a look, these are stats from just the first 2 months. I think this is April or May of 2020. The hockey stick that you had over Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all the rest of the services, suddenly everybody started realizing that this technology exists and it works and it's easy, and it may not be as good as being able to hug people in the office or having a cup of coffee, but you're able to use it to work from home. And the active users, you know, hundreds of millions of active users using this technology for the first time. So we learned a lot. And these are some of the key learnings that I put up on this slide for people to have as takeaways. We learned that remote working is not less productive than being in the office. It's actually more productive for knowledge workers. We weren't talking about laziness for the last 18 months. What have we been talking about? Fatigue. People that have been on too many calls and taking too many meetings and working too many hours and not being able to break away from the desks. We learned that working from home works. It's productive. It's very good for the organization. We also learned that top-down culture, I had mentioned this in this morning's session, if any of you were here, the top-down culture works well. When the CEO wants to tell everybody the direction of the company, or the managing director or your boss wants to have a team meeting and give out instructions and directions, that model works really well over remote, over video collaboration. What doesn't work really well is camaraderie, is finding out what your colleagues are doing and really getting that sense of culture. That doesn't happen organically. You really kind of need to foster that in order to make it work and nurture it. And there are ways to do that, but it was more difficult to do. So that's something that we all need to be aware of. The benefits started to really stack up for this model of working, and they're kind of undeniable at this point. The lost time commuting is amazing. I've lived in my current home for about 25 years in central New Jersey, and I've lived about an hour out of Manhattan my entire career because I knew that's where the jobs were. I knew whatever I needed to do in my field I could do in Manhattan. But in order to get into Manhattan, it's a 10-minute drive to the train station. It's a 40-minute train from my hometown into Penn Station, New York. And then it's 3 subways over to the other side of Manhattan. By the time I get to the office on an August morning, I'm soaked. I need another shower. I feel like I just worked out. And that's, an hour and 10 minutes one way and an hour and 10 minutes back the other way. Whether you have a commute like that, or if you're driving to your office for 40 minutes or an hour, you take all that time away. That's 2 hours a day, 2+ hours a day. Most of the time, all the surveys before the pandemic and after the pandemic show that all of that time went back to productivity for the employer. That had all become productive time. Employees are generally happier. If you hire the right people that like working, and setting their own schedule, they're empowered to be able to do that. They don't have to be in the office at 9 a.m. If they can get their work done, at 6 in the morning before their family's up and then go out with their family, or if they'd rather sleep until 10 or 11 and then do their work, as long as they're meeting their objectives, they're generally happier. You start to use standardized technology. We were talking about that earlier today in a number of conversations. The same, in this particular case, Microsoft Teams that I use in my office, whether I was at my desk in my office or here at a conference or at the hotel room talking to people, we're all starting to use the same standardized platforms to communicate wherever we are. And then the big one is, people are now choosing to live wherever they want to live. My choice for life is no longer, can I get a job as a knowledge worker? Is it a commute distance to my office? Now it's, am I near my family? Or can I afford my home, or the rents or the housing payments the way I want them to be? Or am I in a religious community that I particularly like? Or am I with the taxes where I want them to be? I cannot put all of those choices ahead of being near my office, because if I'm remote working, I don't really need to be in the office every day. It's very important. And then the savings that you get for the company and the benefits. First of all, you guys have heard about carbon emissions and what we're doing to the environment and global warming. Wherever you feel about any of those issues, the fact that those commutes are taken off the table means that we're not wasting as much time, money, and resources getting into an office. The savings in real estate costs, I have a slide which I'm not going to share with you right now. When this pandemic hit about a year, all of a sudden some of the top real estate in Manhattan went back on the market. Companies, enterprises realize now for the first time that they are able to spend a lot less money on real estate and air conditioning and HVAC and technology because they don't need it anymore. And then companies can now hire the best and brightest person. It no longer has to be within market. It can be anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. All of these benefits prove true, and they're the benefits of hybrid working. These are some really amazing statistics. I've included the links on this page. Hopefully you'll be able to get a copy of it. If not, I'm sure we'll share it or superimpose it. There have been a couple of studies done since hybrid working, since the pandemic kicked in. The lowest one rates the productivity increase by 13%, the lowest one. The highest one brings it up to about 77%, averaging out to about 47% more productive. That companies are getting more work, better work out of their knowledge workers when they're working mostly remotely or in a hybrid mode than when they were being forced to come into the office every day. So the companies that you're hearing about wanting people to come back to the office are not doing it because of productivity, they're doing it because of culture, and it's really kind of old or stodgy culture. And this other stat that literally just came out, I have this on my LinkedIn page, just came out a couple of weeks ago, on what U.S. workers would do if they were told they had to go back to the office full time. These numbers are staggering to me from an enterprise standpoint. 6.5% would quit on the spot. And 35%, 35.8, close to 36% would quit in their minds on the spot, but they wouldn't leave their job until they got a better one. 40% of the workforce, if told they had to go back into an office, would say no, either immediately or eventually. And one of the things you need to understand about hybrid working and remote working, if they're going to treat all of us like adults, that meant I made this point earlier this morning as well, so I apologize if you heard it before. You guys have a calendar. You know what time the show started today. You know what meetings, calls you have to be at. You know what clients you need to visit or what partners and when you need. Why would I ever tell you that you have to be in an office 2 days a week and work from home 3 days a week? Or work from home 1 day a week and be in an office 4 days a week? There's no formula that admits the truth. The truth is, you're smart adults. Set your own schedule. Be in the office when you need to be in the office, when you know there's a team meeting scheduled. Be remote, be at clients' places when you need to do that. any company that's coming forward saying, well, we've now decided hybrid working is the future and here's the formula for it, has already lost the point. There is no formula. The formula is let adults be adults and do what they need to do for remote working. So I'm going to ask Aurangzeb to reintroduce himself today, and we're going to kind of talk about these points, what the future holds for hybrid working, what the tools are that you can use, how to judge whether you're doing it well or not. So again, I apologize for talking so long, Aurangzeb, but that's only 10 minutes worth of slides. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
No problem. Great. Thank you, David. Hello, folks. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to your questions and having this be a conversation. My name is Aurangzeb Khan. I'm the Senior Vice President for Collaboration at GN Jabra. GN Jabra is a 150-year-old established Danish company with a long history in audio technology. I founded a company in Silicon Valley called Altea Systems that became a part of Jabra about 2 years ago. We're pioneering in unique products for audio, video, and real-time intelligence to create compelling collaboration experiences, and hopefully share more about that.
Thank you very much. And again, we're going to chat and we're going to ask each other questions, but if any of you people would like to join the conversation, just step up to the mic and ask me questions, challenge what we just said, challenge anything we're going through. So obviously, much of the world, probably accepting financial services at this point, but you know, they're getting there, understand that there's been a fundamental change in the way we work. How have you experienced that with your clients? What have you heard about on the market? How are people realizing this isn't ever going to go back to normal because normal was changing?
I think, you know, David, as you alluded to, the growth in Microsoft Teams is 625%. I think Zoom, similarly, 10 million to 300 million. So it's hyper exponential change, right? Satya Nadella said 2 months into the pandemic that for Microsoft, those 2 months represented 2 years worth of digital transformation. So it's a fundamental change. I think we've lived through it. We lived through it ourselves in our own work. We're seeing it happen for all knowledge workers. And as you pointed out, it's harvesting a lot of benefits for us. But you know, similarly for us, the journey with our customers and companies has been the same. Many folks wanted our headsets, our speakerphones, our speak products, and our Jabra Panicast cameras to improve collaboration. Because they got thrown into this in the beginning, people just improvised with whatever they had. And then a few months into it, they started to say, well, I could really do with a better setup that helps me communicate well, be heard, be seen, see you know, clearly and engage more fully. And our products work with all the popular platforms, as you would imagine. So it's really been a transformative time in the industry. And if you look at ourselves, Microsoft, Zoom, you know, your affiliation, many companies, they've all done well because we're fulfilling a real and urgent demand in the market.
And I've heard from our clients and our members at the IMCCA that they realize that when they go back to a facility, when they go back to an office, it can't be the same office. Yeah. We were chatting before that, you know, the big craze in collaboration 2 years ago was the huddle room. And you know, that was the idea that there were so many open offices and people sitting next to each other shoulder to shoulder that you needed these rooms. I don't have the stat with me, but I think it's something in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% of companies are now reconfiguring their offices to use some of this new equipment and collaborate with people at home. What have you heard? What have you done about you know, the products that are going into the offices?
The immediate thing, you know, as you said, and this is where our product and what it does turned out to be very valuable, is that people just need social distancing, right? So when you're 6 feet apart, how do you create a video solution that lets people sit pretty far apart and still be included? And our product uniquely does that because of the multi-camera technology that we've developed. But it led to the real estate getting repurposed. And now we're seeing a new class of rooms emerge, right? Many of us in the olden days, you know, when you had a meeting, all the people were physically present in the room. That just isn't true anymore. Maybe more than half the people are coming in remote. So how do you create an equitable pixel real estate? You know, it's not about physical real estate as much as about pixel real estate. And there's just an amazing amount of innovation happening from across the ecosystem, many companies in our industry working with the service providers to create gallery views, new kinds of experiences that let people be together or be remote and then just be fully included and full and equal participants.
And it's really amazing to think of the opportunity that presents itself to residential integrators and to commercial integrators, because we're saying less people are going to be going into the office, which is a fact, but you're going to need more equipment in the office. because every meeting now will have at least one remote participant because of everything. So we used to build, when I was working in Wall Street firms, we used to have, in a building, an office building, it would be, 10, 12 conference rooms on the floor, but one video conference room because they were so expensive. They were, $80, $90, $100,000 to build. Now we're talking about 12 conference rooms, each one of them equipped for video collaboration, but the cost to put each room in is under $10,000, and sometimes far under.
Exactly. So many of us may remember earlier in our careers, you may have experienced telepresence, right? It was a brilliant experience. About $500,000 a room, so you don't make too many of them. Well, now that experience literally is democratized to a few $1,000s. And, people are finding this technology to be very powerful for education, for telemedicine, for telehealth. We've got people using it even to just for family get-togethers, just a way to kind of hang out together and enjoy something as a shared experience.
So I'll ask you from the perspective of your company, Jabra, have you changed your product directions or your product roadmap and strategy in response to this pandemic? Are you looking at the future differently than you did 2 years ago? Obviously, without revealing any product secrets, just the idea, are you visioning the market differently?
We've talked in the past, and you kind of know our history, and so we pioneered the idea of creating an inclusive experience. So our devices generate a 180-degree field of view with 99% fidelity for humans. So if you're sitting here or here or here, everybody looks right. They look normal. That turned out to be really valuable when people were sitting further apart. So we've continued with that, and of course, Jabra's heritage in audio allowed us to produce good quality sound, so you can hear the person's timbre and of their voice, their tone very clearly, makes that connection that much more real. We early on started to look at real-time data and real-time information, and that has really taken on a new dimension. I'll give you an example now. For example, our latest generation of devices, if the room has a capacity and the device is programmed with that capacity, using the cameras as AI sensors, it can detect if there are more than that number present, and it can give people information in the room, oral cues, visual cues to say you're over capacity. Smart people with good data make good choices. And so that's something fundamentally new. And then we're also using the array of processing, the edge AI technology has become so powerful to create new experiences. So Virtual Director automatically frames the shot. It's almost like having, we took input from movie directors on how to frame the shot and how to flow it between people. And the whole idea is to let people focus on the conversation, not on the technology, not on remote controls or electromechanical systems. It's all done electronically, so it's fluid. And we think this is a huge runway ahead, as I'm sure you see in your own work, right? There's just so much more coming with AI getting integrated into these devices. One unique thing, I will say new thing we did pick up is the work from home, and we focused one of our products, kept that same high-end architecture, focused it for more of that work from home user. They've had basic webcams for the longest time that just really are, basic and pretty dumb devices and not able to keep up with the rate of change. So we think, and yourselves, others are all looking at new technologies in that area. So we're definitely in that area also.
And I've also seen a change from a lot of manufacturers in the space where it's no longer just a device that's an endpoint to make video or a device that's an endpoint to make audio. When you add that intelligence via AI, some of the most basic things, especially in residential installations, we went through the pandemic where, as I had mentioned earlier today, people didn't have the right equipment, so they need a headset, they need a camera, their companies would give them a stipend, they'd give them money to buy it, and that's usually lost money. The new technology that's coming out into the space can now be tracked. So if I put a camera on my workstation at home, it's no longer a lost bit of revenue for my company. My company, in some cases, depending upon the products that you buy, can make sure it's got the right firmware. It can make sure that it's updated correctly, but they can also make sure it's there. They can make sure I didn't sell it on eBay or do something else with it. So as you look to install home facilities and home studios, please catch up with some of the latest in technologies, because the technology is actually very different than it was even a year or two ago.
Yeah. And actually, a corollary to that is maintenance. IT being able to maintain that device, put the new firmware, keep it up to date, makes it very easy.
So let's talk a little bit about the balance of working. I think I've already told everybody what my opinion is, that any formula is a mistake. We needed to be in Indianapolis today for CEDIA. On Friday I have a meeting, I need to be with a client. Next week I need to meet with a bunch of people. I'm not a big believer in office, but I'm a believer in hybrid. I need to be able to go to my smart device or my tablet or my computer or the hoteling desk and be able to work with the seamless workflow. Are you seeing more of your clients, more of your companies work that way as well?
Very much, and I think my life is similar to yours, right? So, little bit less on the road now, but still connected. And we did a talk Monday night with a lot of our ecosystem partners in Asia Pacific, about 20 different countries, about 500 folks. And, it was a great experience. I was actually at home. Other people were somewhere in office, somewhere at home, somewhere in lockdown. But we could hear and talk and connect and have this virtual community come together and work very well. You pointed some numbers out. It's interesting. We just shared our first data. We did a survey with the Harris Poll organization, which is a 50-plus year organization, does a lot of great work in surveys and understanding what the world is thinking. And we had more than 5,000 respondents from 4 different countries. And the stats that you showed, ours were very similar. We had more than 47% folks saying that the hybrid flexibility was so important to them that they would really consider whom to work for. And that number is 63% for millennials. So if you look at the future workforce, the folks who are now going to propel the industry forward, it's just essential that they get the right equipment and the right setup to have that flexibility, temporal flexibility, spatial flexibility, so that they can be productive when they have the time and the focus and the energy to devote.
Not everyone, and I'm sorry, again, I don't know any of you personally, not everyone in the residential market really understands some of the industry analysts that track the enterprise space, whether you're thinking of Gartner or whether you're thinking of Metrigy Research or Wayne House Research or any other companies. Most of them have published stats around this that are echoing what we're talking about here, that the shift to remote and hybrid working is not just a fad. It's not going to go away if the pandemic ever goes away. It's a permanent change. So we really need to change the way we update, the way we work with equipment, the type of equipment that gets installed and how we work with it. So I guess really the last question, the one we talked about before, was around culture. Unless anybody else here has a comment or a question they would like to make, feel free to step up to the microphone and do it. How do you, and you can speak for yourself personally, I can speak for myself as well, how do you maintain a cultural connection with your colleagues when you're on video so often, when you're not seeing them in the office like you used to?
I think one of the, you mentioned the water cooler movements or the coffee machine moments and so on and so. So in our case, some of the folks actually come into the office quite a bit because of the kind of engineering we do. We need a place to connect. So we've been in a hybrid mode for a while, and we're following local guidelines and they change, and so it's up and down and so on. One, just kind of an instinct back in March, a habit that we instituted. We have a 30-minute open mic slot every week, where it's Fridays at 11, and it's open mic. Anybody who wants to join can join in, and we end up talking a bit about work, a bit about what's happening in our own lives, a bit about what we might be doing that weekend. And it's really, it actually helped because we've hired, also as to your point, we've hired people who we've never met in person, who are in different parts of the U.S. Or in other countries, and so it's really just a sense of trying to build a community. It's a virtual community, but because there's a certain regular cadence to it, it's actually been quite helpful.
One of the things that we did in my organization is in our Microsoft Teams experience, which could just as easily have been Slack, which could just as easily have been any of the other perpetual team chat projects, we opened up a channel to talk about the view from our home, kind of echoing an existing Facebook group, where we ask people to just take a picture of what their house looks like or their apartment looks like and what they're looking at out the window, and then invite 2 friends to do the same. And that started to really grow this concept of communicating, but not about business, about what our lives are like. We did a few other things, which is sort of a pet of the month contest. Everybody put up pictures and again, this doesn't take away from work, but it let us build a little camaraderie amongst the people that were there, so that when we get back together, one of the things that we missed most is hugging, is being with our colleagues, is really feeling the camaraderie that we would have. But we felt a little bit closer when we were doing that. There are also, I don't know how many of you follow the AV industry, but there were numerous Friday nights that we spent over video on Zoom. My friends Chris Netto, and Chris is waiting for me to call him on here, so I'll actually do that while we're talking. But where we spent happy hours online, chatting with friends and people in the industry, certainly the stuff we did with AV Nation. So the idea of trying to keep the communication going is something that, again, it doesn't happen organically. You have to foster it. So I definitely appreciate it. Do you have any last thoughts from your perspective as to how this change is going to affect how the industry is going to change at home?
I think we are seeing return to the office take off, and that whole area is getting equipped and rebuilt, and that's a lot of opportunity for folks in our industry. But as to your point, I agree. The hybrid normal, I think it's here to stay. I think it's a permanent change in how we work, especially for knowledge workers.